This is your chance to sit down if you want to. Right, I'll now ask Martin to speak on behalf of the Socialist Workers Party.
First of all, I'd like to thank Hannah and the comments from the Socialist Party for inviting us here. I'll be honest, I don't normally come to these kind of meetings. I don't want to speak at them, partly, not just your organisation, I mean in general. Partly because I always find them a bit kind of, you know, everyone just attacks everyone, it doesn't seem to go anywhere. But I did want to come to this one. I suppose if you want me to be completely honest about it, I wanted to come and have a little look at your organisation and see what you were saying. So that's why I've come. I can't be any more honest than that, really, I suppose. And so what I want to do is, I want to approach the debate slightly different, as just did. I'm not going to trade blows by and large. What I want to do is I want to talk about how we see the situation and where we see we're going. But then maybe we can find ways of both disagreeing with each other and possibly at the same time some points in which we can agree. With each other, and that may be more productive, maybe not. That's what I want to start. And I suppose for me, I want to start with Obama and his election. I know you've got a discussion about it later on, but I want to just say what I think is fascinating about it. And I agree with the basic position I had outlined. I have no illusions in Obama, but, and it is a big but for me, I don't think you could just ignore what's going on around you. It's just this tweedledee, tweedledum politics. I think you have to start with understanding that for millions of people around the world, this is a wonderful election result. And however confused it comes out, it comes, you know, it's certainly electrified politics. Now, it seems to me there's three key themes to Obama, and there are three key themes that we have to deal with as the left, generally into it. The first, I would argue, is the question in which Obama, I think, you can only explain his victory really, because I think it was very, very close when Palin announced she was standing for Deputy President, is the question of the recession and the economic crisis. It seems to me that the desire to change things is immense. I was in Atlanta, Georgia last summer, just to give you a flavour. I mean, I've been a bit of America recently, but I took a ride. I got to see Michael at King's House, and I was doing some studies on his papers. And I took a wrong turning, and I ended up going into a close. And there was like Brookside. There was 8 houses in a kind of crescent, and all of them were up for sale. And outside each one of the houses was U-Haul vans, you know, those kind of little red and white vans. And I pulled my car up and I said to the guy, well, "What's going on here?" I kind of stupidly said to him, "You've got a bad name or something?" And he went, "No, we're all having our homes repossessed, and we're all being taken out now." And I then went back and looked at the figures. And last year, 1 million Americans had their homes repossessed. And this year, 2 million Americans will have their homes repossessed. And therefore, the fear of the crisis runs completely right through Obama's election. Second, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but really is the question of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I don't believe Obama's got a solution to Afghanistan. I think the surge in Afghanistan is what he's going to go for, and I believe that's just carrying out the same policies as before. But nevertheless, the way people project their own personal views on him is he's going to end the war in Iraq. I went to see Obama speak in Philadelphia, and I was kind of pulled out of the crowd as one of these. He called me a limey. He said this limey's going to be what a limey's view of what's going on in this election. And I was on a radio station with 3 people, 2 other people actually, a 70-year-old black woman and a white steel worker from just down the road, Pittsburgh. And they were asked what they thought Obama was going to do. Now, Obama said very little in his speech, by the way, of anything concrete. And the black woman said he's going to end the war in Iraq and he's going to create a nationalised health service in America. And those 2 things never passed his lips, right? The second thing that was said by the white guy goes, I agree with all that, he's also going to stop the job losses in America. And it seems to me that when you use terms like hope, change and all the rest of it, people project themselves onto your shirt what they believe is going on. And therefore, for me, the war and imperialism and the growing crisis, far from the economic crisis when imperialism will be less of a problem, I believe we're going to see greater instability, as we saw in Georgia and just the other day in Russia, bring its missiles around to the border of Poland. And I think this is quite a serious threat. And therefore, the third thing is Obama's slogans, change and hope. Because therefore, for me, it seems to me to both show what people fear and at the same time the massive desire, this is not confined to America, I think it's confined across Europe as well, a massive desire for some kind of change. some kind of readjustment to the way the world is. And therefore, for all of us, no matter what organisation you're involved in, this is a huge test for all of us. I mean, you know, we can sit there and argue on it, but this is a huge test for the left in general, because if we are heading towards a 1930s style recession and all that goes with it, if that's the case, then Cliff is probably right about slow motion, just a bit slower than maybe the votes it would be, but nonetheless, we are heading towards that. Therefore, it seems to me that the point of that is that we have to absolutely understand that we have to try and get it right, because the 1930s was a period of fascism and unemployment and complete misery, but it was also a decade of struggle, resistance, and most importantly for us in this revolution. And therefore, it seems to me very, very important. The third point that follows from that, and I think it's very important the left to understand this, is just because there's economic crisis doesn't mean things automatically move to the left. And no one's mentioned it so far, but I think it is worth saying you can get a reaction to the right on this question, and I think we're seeing that with the BNP in Britain, and I think we're seeing it with the so-called revival of the Tories. We'll see how far that goes, and maybe Cameron's blown it already, I don't know, but you can get a reaction to the right. So I think the situation is very, very serious indeed. And I want to go back to an old friend of all of ours, Engels. And Engels described you have to look at each situation in terms of its economic, political and ideological tests to it. And I just want to make a few points about that, because it seems to me that we do have to get to grips with some of the things around the economic crisis right now, because I believe this crisis, far from being a crisis of the finance sector, goes back to the earlier part of the 1990s, where really what you, put it absolutely crudely, is what you've seen, really, is the weakness of what they now call the real economy, what most of us would call manufacturing and service sector, the weakness of the profit factor in those areas, make you see massive investment away from that and into finance capital. I mean, inward investment in finance capital in Britain now, was last year was 70%, America 30%, which again I think is an indicator of how much more serious I think the crisis is going to be in Britain. You certainly see that in terms of Spain and other countries that had a massive inward investment into finance and housing markets. And what you've seen is that investment into it, that development of the finance sector, the credit crunch, the credit boom, the subprime market in America, and in many ways in Britain, although in Britain it comes in a slightly different way. We don't have a subprime market in one way. What we do have is half buy, half rent, and the massive growth of people buying properties in order to rent them out later on. And as that begins to go down, it creates massive problems. I don't know about anyone in this room, but my credit card is absolutely to the max, and any time I manage to put a bit of money and they lower it, so it obviously shows that I'm a toxic debt for them. So, you know, we have to think about that very carefully. But I think it's important we don't just limit it to the finance sector. I know people read Gary Bush's thing in the News of the World, but he talks about the only problem with this crisis is not going to affect ordinary people, it's just going to be a crisis of finance, and the only problems it might affect working class people is if you're a West Ham fan, which I am, it will take your sponsorship off your football shirt. And that's complete rubbish, because I think really, at the beginning of Black Monday, I read the outside sections of the Financial Times about its impact on the global economy. What I found myself doing more and more is being moved into the middle sections of the FT, which talks about its impact on ordinary society. So I'll give you three statistics. I think it's a crisis on what is the basis of working class people's lives: fuel, food, jobs and housing. And what you're seeing right now is unemployment, they hit 2 million at Christmas, and they reckon 3.5 million by next year, this time next year. Now, any of you old enough in this room to remember what it was like under Thatcher, that was what we got the highest point of unemployment under Thatcher. That was the kind of stuff, the voice of the black stuff, and all the rest of it. A pretty appalling time to be around. The second thing, I don't know if people have seen this, but IDS have just released a report about the pensions for the government, which says that everybody's pension in this country will probably fall by between 25 and 30%. This is a huge attack on all the working class living standards, and I think we're going to see that more and more become a central feature of what we're talking about. The second point, and I suppose it takes up some of the Hannah's disagreements with us about Labour, is how it impacts politically. Because if we were going to meet a month ago, we would be sitting there talking about Gordon Brown's finished, I think. I think most people would be saying that's not just true of the left. The Labour Party themselves were saying he was going to go. And it's no surprising, given that Labour's defeats in Crewe and London, and in Glasgow in the summer and London in the May elections. But something happened. She gave obvious by-election. Now, I'm not surprised Labour didn't lose it in a way, but I mean, I think everyone else was quite surprised. I mean, Glenn Roberts was, whatever way you want to pose it, is Labour a little bit of a ground bounce back again, I would argue. And therefore we have a problem on the left, because two things can happen at the same time. You can have both a decline of Labour, and I agree with what Hannah's point about Labour is in massive decline. I mean, I don't know if people have seen this, but you know, when Blair came, what did he say when Labour Party membership would be? 500,000, I think he was claiming going to get it to. Patrick Saeed, the Sheffield University guy who does Labour Party membership figures, he's done it every 4 years. He's going to come out next year with a report that says Labour Party membership has fallen to 120,000. Which is an incredible thing, really. I mean, you're talking about, you know, massive hemorrhaging. And that's absolutely true, and that decline, I suspect, will continue. However, the idea that Labour and the people who support Labour, I'm surprised you're saying this, because certainly 10 years ago, we'd be much more in the wing of you have to be outside the Labour Party, and this will be now you have to be inside the Labour Party, but nevertheless, well, more than that, actually, more than 20 years ago. Yeah, I'm just getting older, don't mind. But it is true 20 years ago, certainly within the argument. It seems to me that both we have to have an alternative to Labour, but we just can't write off Labour and all the people who vote for it, the millions of people who vote for it, are people who are no opens. We have to both understand that Labour can continue to hang on. It's a very, very well organised and really has quite serious hold in it. I mean, just to give you some flavour, my dad's been a Labour Party member for 55 years, been a councillor, an official for the GMB, and my old man joined the SWP, I think, 1999, 2 years after Blair got in. And when we had the respect election result, my mum was a member of the party, and my mum took him to go and vote for the very first time. It's the first time in his entire life he was going to vote against Labour. And my mum had to stand in front of him in the polling station while he had his pencil to give the cross to respect, and he stood there and kept looking at it, and he was definitely tempted to go and vote Labour. My mum said, "Don't put your cross on the right spot," and finally forced him to do it. I say that partly because it shows you what a bloody coward this old my dad is, but more importantly, what it shows to me is the pressure and the real feelings that people want to stick with Labour. And I don't think we should underestimate that. That's not to say we should build an alternative to Labour. I'm absolutely committed to that. I've been committed to it ever since I left the Labour Party myself. But it seems to me we can't just write off Labour and all those people around. We have to continue a very serious fight against it. I want to say something else, which I think again is going to prove problematic for us as socialists in England. It's I don't normally recommend books by there, right? In fact, I've never done it before, so I know you're going to denounce me for this, but I am going to recommend a book at the moment by a guy called, well, two of them, Lee and Stanley, and they've written a book called Triangulation, The End of Politics. And it's basically a book which looks at Labour's method of triangulation, the damage it's done. And for those who don't know what triangulation is, it's Brown's policy, really, and Blair before him, it comes from Clinton, of moving your party into the centre ground in order to either force your opposition further to the extremes and narrow its electoral base, or to take over the mantle of the middle class. That's what Labour have done quite successfully in one way. But what this book really sells at is the damage that begins to do. And it talks about the massive hemorrhaging of Labour Party membership and support in a whole number of areas. And then it comes to the conclusion, the problem with this is this vacuum can then be filled by those on the right. And it talks about 5 areas of the country where this has happened most of all. It talks about Rotherham, Oldham, Burnley, Barking and Leeds. Now it doesn't take a genius to work out this is the areas with the biggest fall. Think about those places. This is also the cities and towns where we see the biggest rise of fascism, and therefore the argument of just saying vote Labour to keep the BNP out becomes a mockery. Because actually you've got a circular argument going on here, which is I hate Labour, I want an alternative, I'm going to vote, don't vote BNP, vote against the BNP, who do I vote for? Labour. It doesn't get you anywhere, and I think it seems to me it's a major problem, not with your organisation, I hasten to add, but with many big sections of the left. The idea of just voting Labour is just an absolute disaster. We'll end up with a big problem. And that's the second thing I want to say. The third thing on the ideological question, it seems to me the other reason it's a good time for all of us is for the last 20 years we've had free market ideology rammed down our throats. We've been told that market is good, you need to be greedy, there are go-getters, all the rest of it, and that has now collapsed around its ankles. And that's got to be a good thing for all of us because it begins to weaken that. I think we're also seeing a rise of Keynesianism, which I know some people left worry about this. There seems to be 2 bits of Keynesianism coming out, first of all. There are those Keynesians, but I call them the right ones. These are the kind of people that tell us that we need to have socialism for the rich. could just bail out the top of the banking industry and that would be all right. I have no trouble with that idea. I mean, it seems to me, if you're going to bail out people, why just pay off their debts? Why not take the money and the profits and the good times well from it? It's the most basic thing for any socialist to argue. But it's also, I think, a question of the left-wing pensions, people like Larry Elliott in The Guardian and people like that. It seems to me we want to be with them. Even though I don't believe the pension solution was increased profitability in the 1950s and 1960s in Britain. I believe that much more to do with the permanent arms economy, but that's a different meeting for a different argument for a different day. But I do believe, ultimately, that we want to be with them, because I believe it opens up the idea that you fight to save all people's jobs and not just rich people's jobs and all the rest of it. And the idea that the biggest bailouts we've seen, the biggest nationalisation, is a positive thing. Although, we have to be careful. That's why I don't really agree about the question of Russia. I don't believe there's a plan of the economy just because you own the commanding arms of the economy. It don't mean you control it. But that's, again, another thing. And when we have things like the FT saying Marx is right, was Marx right, that seems to be a good position for socialists to find ourselves in. The idea that Marxism is back is very, very, very good indeed. And the question of does capitalism doesn't work, and the need for socialism seems to me to be bigger and better for all of us, and that's got to be a good thing. Then I suppose we should get on to the questions where we disagree. Or maybe you disagree with what I just said, I don't know. And that's what I want to come on to. Because first of all, we're often accused, and Hannah's not going to be the first or the last person to say that the SWP is over-optimistic, that all we care about is onwards and upwards, and all the rest of it. And I think that's a fair criticism of the SWP, if you want to put it one way. Because Lenin also said it's a fair criticism of the Bolshevik Party. I've just been rereading Lenin's writings because I think it's a difficult one for us. Because it seems to me, if you want to be a revolutionary socialist, you start by the fact that you're fighting, swimming against the grain, and you're fighting against the conventional ideas of society. And therefore, if you're about to fight and go into a fight, it seems to me that socialists have to do two things. They have to understand the potential in every struggle, and that's what the SWP does. At the same time, understand that we have the legacies, defeats, and the possibilities, and assess that. And far from not assessing those kind of things, I think we do. We're on record, both in terms of our quarterly magazine, the ISJ, and the stuff I produced for our pamphlets on the class struggle, to talk about both the good things and the problems. In fact, I wrote 2 whole chapters on what's gone wrong with the Orchid Squad in my little pamphlet on the Orchid Squad. So far from just ignoring the problems, we have to have an assessment. But if you want to move any organisation forward, you don't do it on the basis of, well, we lost the last 20 years, we're going to lose again. You have to try and seize the initiative, grab the link in the chain, and pull it, pull the key link. And I think that's the question of it. The second thing I did want to say, which I think is fair to both organisations, is that we've gone all through 20 years or 25 years. I don't really want to get to how long this has been going on for, but a long time. I tried to hold together revolutionary organisations in difficult times. And I think anyone, our organisation has found it just as difficult as anyone else's, so let's not beat around it. We don't think it's all wonderful or anything like that. I think to hold it together in what has been the lowest level of class struggle, probably since the 1920s, is difficult for all of us. And that's not just, we've acknowledged that plenty of times before. And it's a testament to both organisations, using different methods, using different tactics, that we've held them together. And we have to learn from that. Because I don't believe there's all right and all wrong in any situation. I mean, I learned a lot going off to Italy and France over the last 10 years. And actually, they held their organisations in a different way than the SWP held its organisation through the downturn. It seems to me, if we don't learn from each other, then actually we're bound to make the same mistakes. And, we've made mistakes, and so have you not. So it doesn't seem to me to be much point in doing that. And I'll tell you why we make mistakes. Because any organisation that intervenes in the struggle makes mistakes. The only people who don't make mistakes are those who don't do anything. If you don't do anything, you definitely don't make mistakes. But if you do, you do. And that's not a big problem about that. We have to assess that and learn from that. Another question of poll tax, just so we get this absolutely clear. It's a long time ago now, but yes, the SWP at the beginning was absolutely wrong on that question. Did we correct it? Yes, we did. How do I know? Because many of our comrades end up going to prison and going to court, including myself, over it as well. So I think it's important that we understand that all of us do that. The question of any revolutionary organisation is that when you begin to move on a certain idea, do you change or not? If you don't change, then you're a sect. If you do change, then you learn from the class. And I think that's important for all of us and all the rest of it. I want to talk about the key thing for me over the next few months, or the next few years actually, is it's going to come out, if you think about this crisis that we face right now, if you think about 1929 was just the beginning of the crisis. And I would say some people argue it didn't end until 1942 with America entering the war. You could certainly say in Britain it ended in 1939. And the real thing for me around all this is that we are going to go through a protracted and long period of pain and hurt and resistance and anger. And actually, for our starting point has to be, what are we going to do around this and how are we going to fight back? It seems to me there seems to be two or three areas here, that we need to look at. First of all, obviously, our basic, being the same as yours, is the emancipation of the working class has to be the active working class, and therefore the trade union struggle is very, very important. It seems to me there are negatives about it, which we've talked about already, but there's also positives. These are the TUC figures, and you know, you can argue whether they're any good, but given that everyone uses them, it seems to me to be an indicator and nothing much more. But this is what the TUC claims to be its figures. Official statistics show the strikes on the rise. In 2005, 157,000 working days were lost. I don't like the term lost, but I think won to strikes is a better way of putting it. In 2006, it was 754,000, and in 2007, just over a million. This year, it's set to be higher again. It's a lot higher than strikes next week have gone ahead, but that's not the point. Now, the key point for me is that's much lower than the 1970s, but actually more favourable than the 1990s. So we're beginning to see a bit of a rise in that. And therefore the question is, why is that? And I think there are two things going on at the same time. This is what I know is going to be on, so we might just get this one out of the way. I believe that what we've seen really since the development of the Awkward Squad and the growth of the lefts and the unions is a rising curve, very low, but nevertheless a genuinely rising curve of some kind of working class militancy. I'm now seeing it in a number of ways, and I think the last year has said it a lot to me. I think it's kind of moved up a little bit. I mean, I think anyone who saw the Shell tanker drivers dispute would have seen something that was quite exciting. I was on the UAF demonstration in London, and this poor old bloke and his wife were running along. They were absolutely knackered, and I was on the truck with the sound system. And I let them get on the old truck, and I said, "Are you all right?" He goes, "Yeah." And his wife goes, "He's so proud. I'm so proud of my husband at the moment." So I said, "Oh, why's that?" She goes, "Oh, he's a Shell tanker driver, and he's just won an 18% pay rise, an extra, I can't remember what she said, £800 a month extra in his wages." And she gave him a big kiss on the cheek and said, "I love my old man." And I thought that was a wonderful little anecdote, really, about how people feel. I have to say, I was at a teacher's demo in London, and I have to say, to hear the teachers sing the Red Flag, and the other one I heard was, what's the other one? I don't know, Woody Guthrie song, This Land Is Our Land. To hear people do, I imagine my teachers ever singing the Red Flag at any demonstration I've ever done, or anything I've ever seen. I thought it was an amazing thing. And I think it's good to see that, and I think you can make the same thing about the baggage handlers and other schools. So we've seen a small but serious rise in militancy. At the other time, we've seen a section of the trade union leadership, not all of them, but the majority of them, become absolutely craven towards Labour. Absolutely craven, and a disgrace in my opinion, and they're doing damage. And I think those two forces are colliding. And therefore the question is, what do you do in that situation? And I'll tell you what, I'm glad our comrades voted to carry on the strikes, because it seems to me, in a situation where the government is trying to whack wages down, when there's an argument on the left that turns around and says that people won't fight in the session, I don't accept that argument at all, never have accepted it. When workers have got to fight, we have to say we needed unity. And I thought it was a tragedy that the NUT didn't say they were going to go out and strike. I'm sorry. They had a majority. I've always been in a position of they were a majority. When have we ever not had a strike when we had a minority? Has anyone ever said, "Oh, we only got 48%, very close, 48% was very, very close indeed, we should go out on strike over it"? No, the NUT got to it, even when sections of the left, and I'm not accusing the Socialist Party of this, by the way, when sections of the left said they weren't going to win and never fought the same kind of campaign as they did over Steve Sinnott. It was a tragedy that vote was then pulled off. And I believe it's like a domino effect. It goes from Unison, then NUT, and then I think it's a shame that the PCS voted to end their action. I'm a firm believer that when you just win a strike ballot, you have to then go for action, because the bosses only respect one thing. They only respect it when you fight back. You have to show that you've got the capacity to do so. I'm not accusing people anywhere of being sell-out merchants or just. It's a serious tactical debate, but I want to make it clear it's not that posturing. But I think for our comrades to vote against it because we want to see that struggle carry on, I think it will be a big setback for the pay campaign to see those unions pull out of the action. I'm afraid that I don't believe people see it like that. And I already believe there's enough confusion inside the rank and file as it is as well. And I think we have to understand that. I think we have to understand the pressures being put on all of our members, and we have to try and fight until we have the clearest character to win. Last 2 points, and that's about us and United Fronts. Because another world is possible is not the SWP's position, that's the position of globalised resistance, which is a united front, which had been a Monbiot to us and all of us. All of us have been involved in united fronts, and the slogans that are you call them programmatic. I would just say they're just slogans that unite the widest section of people around us. And for the SWP, we are going to continue to work inside united fronts to fight the common enemy. Because the danger of it right now, it seems to be in the situation, is there's lots of socialists, but not enough unity in action. We need more unity in action, not less. And therefore, the united front tactic seems to me to be a very, very important thing, because what it does is it opens up the possibilities of working with wider forces who may disagree on a whole number of other things to come together and move back. And of course, Hannah, it's not a question of it being the model that Trotsky put forward in 1933. The way we always put this on is the spirit of the United Front, because we are not a mass communist party like Trotsky was right about in the 1930s of, what was it, 300,000 members? I might be wrong, please, it was a huge party, and an SPD of a million members. Yet for us, it's a question, much more importantly, of understanding that we want the spirit of us saying to people in the Labour Party and those outside the Labour Party need to come together to fight over issues that we agree on, whether it's the war, whether it's defend council housing, whether it's fight against fascism, whether it's love music, hate racism. And I do have to think, we have to say, no, we're not the SWP, and I'm perfectly happy to sit here and take the knocks. But you have to also say that the SWP has done a lot. And have to be recognised, the SWP has done a lot in those struggles over fascism, over the question of housing, over the question of fighting imperialism, and consistently carried that work out and not just walked away. That often we were always accused, the SWP won't stick the course. We've stuck the course in DCH, we've stuck the course in Stop the War, we've stuck the course in anti-fascist work, and I believe we've proved our ability to do things. You may not agree with everything we do, but I think it would be unfair on the SWP to say we've not stood there and done our best to fight back. The last key point is about left realignment. I was really glad to hear what Hannah said about that, because I thought I was going to come in here and everyone was just going to slag us off for respect, and I'm sure that's going to come in the debate. So. But I did want to thank Hannah for that point, because I thought it was completely non-sectarian and important to all of us. Let me just say what I think. On the question of the IMT, that's just not true. We did not go to Bob Crow and say to him, we don't want you to stand. I'll tell you why we didn't, because I was there. And I went with Nick Rack, and I went with George Galloway. Sadly, these two are not my friends anymore, so we've fallen out over various other things. And that was not true. What we said was, we thought it was crazy to have the RMT standing and the respect standing at the same time, and what we wished to see happen was, would it be possible to have a united slate, and we were not putting any precursors on who should be the candidates, we wanted to have a balanced slate. And Bob Crow said he'd go away and think about it. We went away and thought about it, and we had a big row amongst ourselves. So, it didn't really go anywhere. But that's the absolute gospel truth. That's not a lie at all, or anything like that. So I wanted to just make that point absolutely clear. On the question of respect, I know what you're going to say, but let me just say what I think is wrong about respect and all the rest of it. I don't buy the question of the SWP broke it up particularly. I don't say we didn't make mistakes in the debate. We made our own position clear. And if you don't, you can read it in all kinds of sectarian blogs and you'll see what I thought and other people did. I stand on my own record on that. What I do think is the problem is this, and this is not George Galloway's fault. People may be surprised I'm going to say this, but I don't blame George Galloway either. The biggest problem we had, with respect to my opinion, was this. That only one Labour Party MP broke, and only one trade union leader broke, Mark Sawalker and George. And the problem we have is the SWP, I openly state this, is we are bigger than our size. And there's no reason in something like electoral politics where we have to be in it. That's huge problems, by the way, and I'll make no bones about that. Sometimes, to keep the coalition together, we've had to argue our members to vote for positions that we didn't really agree with. I'll take an example, and the one that has always been used against us is why did our comrades put their hands up to vote against the workers' wage. Just for the record, every SWP member who's a full-time official for the union only takes their working wage in their part. That's our position at the side of organisation. We didn't vote for it in terms of respect, because we believe if we were to do that, that would take away any possibility of Bob Crow coming in. There's even those on the left, not anyone in this room, I actually to add, but there are those on the left that say that Mark Sawalker doesn't even take the workers' wage, therefore he shouldn't even be allowed to be in the organisation. We didn't buy that, but we did that, and we did that in order to hold it together. And it's not a good place to be. And if you find yourself in that position, I hope you did a better job than we did. It's not a good place to be, because you end up trying to hold things together and go against what you've got to do. And that's the difficult position, and not one I welcome. The problem you have is, whenever that becomes a major default argument, there is little pressure on anyone actually to stick. You see, if you had a wider forces in respect, and which is what I still wish we had done, now I don't mind if you guys have been in it, or we had a few more Labour MPs, a few more General Secretaries of the unions. I'll tell you what, you can argue it both ways really, and I ain't really in the business of arguing, but you can argue it both ways. One, if George Galloway was fucking about, which I think he was, and you had other trade unions and other Labour MPs, they said to him, or ex-Labour MPs, come on George, stop it, that would have been a stabilising force on him. You can also make the same point about the SWP. If it was the other way round and you thought we were the ones misbehaving, then if you had wider forces saying don't go, do you think you could just say, oh, off we go, you take it, or you of any of this real improvement, we are going to need wider forces involved in it. We don't need a narrow organisation. I believe we need a wider socialist organisation. I would say that was our biggest mistake, and that's the one thing I regret. And I don't know what we could have done about it, but I do feel that was problematic. But I don't regret one thing. I don't regret standing. I don't regret winning in Bethnal Green. I don't regret winning Michael Lavett as our councillor in Preston or anything else. You've got councillors in your organisation as well, and I think you have to say, to break down when you have really a system of first past the post, it is massively disadvantageous for the left to win. And actually for any organisation, and I'll take my hat off today, Nelson, the comments from Coventry and Lewisham, just like I take that to our comments, Ray and Michael, who are elected councillors, that is a major test, but that's not enough. We all know that's not enough. Please don't take this the wrong way, I'm not knocking those comments at all. It's not enough because we need a wider, national, broader-based party. And I say this, we are still, in the SWP, absolutely committed to the idea of creating a left alternative to Labour. And I believe, actually I agree with Hannah completely on this, I believe that is going to happen, maybe not before the election, general election, but possibly afterwards. I think there are I think the desire for an alternative to Labour is greater now than it was during the Respect days. The possibilities are coming together, we have to sort out, but in some ways, we have to stop the smoking about it. We're going to move forward, we have to kind of come to agreement and find out where, well, that's what I've got one more sentence to do around that. And this is my last point, because we all disagree in this room, and we disagree historically for the splitting up of the Cliff and Grant and the rest of the years and years and years ago. I wasn't even born then, so I don't even argue about what we said or what you said. I wasn't even there. So it seems pointless. But what I do believe is that all major struggles begin to realign the left. And I do believe that the Respect came out to stop the war movement. That's my personal belief. That's what actually went through. I believe if there are struggles around the economic crisis, if there begins to be more resistance to the trade unions, if we begin to get campaigns against repossessions of houses and against fascism and all the other things that all you comrades are involved in here, if we begin to do that, then I think we can begin to shape a new left where we can find ways both of carrying on our disagreements but also begin to work closer together. And I think that has got to be the desire for all of us, because actually we have to have something better than what we've got now. So I'd like to say thanks for listening, and let's see how it goes for round two. Thanks.